All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is Friday night. We are on YouTube and Twitter, on also sportnarium.com/player, and have some of the guys here. I know it's been a couple weeks, obviously, due to some unfortunate streaming circumstances, but we are joined here from the Talking Rivals and the Liftoff Jets, Mr. Chris Pizzea, Rob Maraska, Mr. Contest Man, and the brute force Brad Weiss, who obviously does a number of different things. You see him with Level Up and Long Island Nets and the Brew Crew, if that's actually still a thing. Also, notably, a head coach for our Plainview Boys JV basketball team, and of course, the legendary SJLI Golden Eagle, now 27th, I believe, all time in school history and rebounds. And near the top of the list for how much longer we'll see when it comes to block shots. And gentlemen, how you doing here on a Friday night?
Good.
Doing well. Besides the one topic we got to discuss. This is great.
Well, it's going to probably be a big elephant in the room here, certainly. But I do want to get to Rob Maraska first because you got a contest here. And for those that are listening on Sportzwire Radio, talk about this contest here and what's it all about.
Yeah, I was actually able to get a Domingo Herman Tops Now Perfect Game card that I will be giving away. It's a good-looking card, obviously. It sold out in no time, so I was lucky to get a couple of them. And after the show, I'll post it on Twitter, and we'll announce it, if we do a show next week or whatever, I'll announce a winner. I also have to announce the winner of that Nimmo card too, because since we haven't been on, I haven't picked the winner.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta be honest. I mean, we got a temporary block on Facebook, and to do these shows with like limited comments and a few people out there, it's business is business. But tell us about that winner here for those that certainly might be anxiously waiting.
Yeah, well, I didn't get a winner yet. I'm going to do everything next week for both cards. We'll announce it next week. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of people going after the Haman card. I mean, it was a perfect game. So
yeah, no, we're going to definitely talk about that here for sure. Absolutely. But
so those are the contests right now that are going on, and there'll be more on Twitter.
Oh, I'm sure of that here. We can follow you, I know, on Twitter at R Maraska and also Rob Maraska out there on Facebook. I just shared the link on Facebook. We'll see actually who else here is going to come out here, and I have some messages already, but we'll come back to that. But I guess maybe we should talk about the Yankees first, because the Mets, I'm sure, are going to dominate the topic here. But I want to go with Chris Pizzea here, and obviously Yankees make history with Domingo Herman. They do it in Oakland. Nonetheless here, and I guess kind of interesting. Maybe the last perfect game, I guess, in the Oakland's ballpark there. But talk about it here, Chris, and kind of a shot in the arm for the Yankees. Yankees get a much-needed series win here coming into today's play. They're, I believe, half a game ahead in that last wild card spot, kind of a four-team race there. And talk about what it meant to you and just maybe the shot in the arm it gives to this team.
Yeah, what's up, guys? It's been a while. Seeing you guys, great to be back. It was great. Obviously, to see history like that right before your eyes, it's always awesome. Perfect game, and it's not just on the pitcher; it's obviously on the fielders as well, because they can't make an error, so they got to be feeling pressure. Probably after the fifth inning, they're probably feeling it. But it was pretty special to see, and it was probably the most unlikely perfect game, right? I mean, the guy gave up
just coming back off an injury, yeah.
And he gave up 17 runs in his last two starts combined. So for him to go from two extremely bad starts where he got lit up literally to a perfect game is pretty remarkable. And he was probably pitching for his spot in rotation, because Rodon is coming back very soon. And all these other kids have been coming up and pitching great. Schmidt has been turning it around lately. Whenever Brito's up, he's been pitching good. Vasquez came up, he pitched good. So other guys are knocking on the door. So I think Herman saved his spot in the rotation with that perfect game, and maybe even brought up his trade value. Maybe he might get traded now. Who knows? Because there's too many arms now in the rotation coming up with Rodon, and Cortez will be back hopefully by the end of July. And then we got news today that Montas might even come back at some point. I'm not really, if he comes back by September, that'll be great. So at least he has a month to get ready for the playoffs, but we'll see. But I think the bigger news, not the bigger news, I shouldn't say the bigger news, but also big news from that Oakland A's series was the offense in the last 2 games actually got, they woke up. They scored 21 runs in 2 games. So hopefully it's not just the A's pitching that did that, and it's more about the bats actually waking up. So I was looking forward to seeing what they did tonight to St. Louis, but that game's rained out. It's gonna be a day-night doubleheader tomorrow, so who knows? But hey, all good news. So
listen, I mean, definitely one New York team at least will have some meaningful baseball. And I want to say hello to our friends over in Legendary Backyard Wrestling and CJ the Alpha Junt. And I'm kind of CJ. I mean, I know you're obviously back in action for our friends here in Legendary Backyard Wrestling. And I know we have a spot next week with a Backyard Wrestling Hall of Famer and Mr. Chris Aruda. I'm very excited about that. We'll make a formal announcement in a couple of days as we get closer. So very excited about that here. But we'll certainly come back to him and the Brute Force Brad Weiss. Now, first thing I have to ask you, were you on a basketball court when Domingo Germán had made history? Were you doing something else? I would imagine you were probably juggling multiple different things. But I guess you can maybe talk about that. But also just give me your impressions here on seeing history. And I think it's also history because I think it could be the last perfect game we're going to see ever in an Oakland baseball stadium. So I think that's kind of a note here. I know A's fans probably don't want to hear that. But talk about overall impressions here. And I do kind of think here the theme here is that this gives a shot in the arm to this Yankees team, which is kind of had a weird season. They are in that last wild card, but it's been a weird season. Injuries up and down. I know in the American League, a lot of teams have had injuries, but it just seems that just maybe this could help the Yankees here and kind of keep them on track. And give me your thoughts on all of that there in a mouthful.
Yeah, so to answer your initial question, yes, I was on the basketball court. I was actually in a men's league game, so I did get home to seeing that, and at the end, kind of the ending of it. So that was pretty cool. With that being said, obviously it's a really amazing accomplishment. The first time in 11 years that anyone's accomplished that, obviously since Felix Hernandez. And again, that's it's no easy feat. And Chris mentioned it. I think that's the bigger part of this that not everybody's looking into, but Domingo Germán's job was on the line. I mean, it was slowly creeping away from him. With the return of Rodon coming up, as he mentioned, and other guys pitching well. The Clark Schmidts of the world pitching pretty well for the Yankees recently. So his job was in jeopardy, and to go out there after 2 really bad starts and have that type of game. I know it was the Oakland Athletics, but ladies and gentlemen, let's remind ourselves of another pitcher who needed to do the same thing earlier this season. That was Carlos Carrasco for the Mets, who had to come back against the A's and pitch well, and he did not do very well. So, listen, for this guy to come back, again, it's a Major League Baseball team, even though really a minor league baseball team in a way. But at the same time, it's amazing.
They were on a winning streak a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, but that was a couple weeks ago. The Mets are winning games a couple months ago. But, listen, at the same time, let me save them for later. I don't really want to talk about them right now. I mean, first of all, just to say hello to everybody again. I mean, it's been nice to kind of be off at this point because it saved my mental health from having to talk about this team because I probably would have exploded for a few times.
Yeah, I would imagine if we were on Facebook Live, we'd be getting comments left and right about this. I mean, so maybe it's good that we have a smaller tent these days on the regular sports show. I
talking about the Mets is a toxic thing, but to get back to the Yankees and this, I mean, again, a major accomplishment, from somebody like Domingo Germán, like I said, who wasn't performing, who wasn't a pitcher you necessarily expect to do it, goes out there, has a great performance, and again, saved his job, which I think is more important to him probably, even though obviously a perfect game, like Rob said, is no joke, and obviously that card should do very well. But certainly the fact that he kept his job, I think, is probably the biggest thing because he was, another bad start away from losing his job in the rotation, potentially not being able to come back either because they don't really have a spot for him. But now they definitely have to keep him.
I'll go to Rob Maraska in a second, but I want to go to Chris because you touched upon Carlos Rodon for a second, and this has been a name that when we were live on Sportswire early in the season was kind of the name we would hear about, and maybe now it looks like he's finally getting closer. And that could be, we've said this in prior shows and prior years in the past in Sportswire. That's almost like an in-season trade. And a huge in-season trade because this is a guy that's a top-end guy. That's the guy you were hoping to be really your number 2 starter behind Garrett Cole to help you get deep in the postseason. And how big could somebody like that be for this team that's going to still be playing a lot of meaningful baseball now as the calendar turns, as we get into the second half of the season.
Well, I think what it'll do is take a lot of pressure off of the rest of the rotation, whether it's Cole, Severino, Cortez when he returns, Schmidt, it just takes pressure off of them. And it's also going to take pressure off the bullpen if he could get into games, get into that 6th and 7th inning, right? To kind of, alleviate pressure off the bullpen. Like Met fans know about putting more pressure on the bullpen is not a good thing. But thankfully, at least with the Yankees, they have, the best, ERA wise, but they have one of the best bullpens in baseball. Their rotation's been really good as well. So as much as, it's great. It's just going to make the pitching that much better and take pressure off of everybody else to have that kind of an arm in the rotation. I'm more into and more excited about seeing Judge on the field the last couple of days, kind of working out, lightly, nothing crazy, but hopefully this is going to lead into him, returning at some point, because it looked like for a while, for a couple of days there or a week, looked like he wasn't going to return. You kept hearing, the sprained and it was broke, whatever. And now, who knows, but that's the big thing. You need that bat in the lineup. That's going to be the bigger, impact on this team because the offense is what's been so bad since Judge went down. So hopefully if he comes back or with the trade deadline, you never know. There's going to be a move or two by the Yankees for sure. I don't think they're going to, stand pat here because they know they need another outfielder, another big bat, and they'll probably reinforce the bullpen at some point. And you still got Loizaga coming back in like August. He's another guy. And you talk about that. That could be like their big trade deadline move. And
it's interesting because you brought up the Yankee lineup, and I know as Judge is gone, as this team has been offensively, and certainly Stanton's been another topic, and I'm not even going to bring up Donaldson and some others, but it's fascinating to me that this Yankees lineup has just been so kind of top heavy, and you're kind of hoping here Judge comes back and you're starting to see other guys here in this lineup that maybe that can also, especially the last couple of days, also kind of kick into gear because you look at the other teams that the Yankees are competing with. You got Baltimore, obviously. You got Toronto. You got Houston. You got those teams there that we just spoke about. Boston you could throw in there, I guess, as well. But, these different teams, they can hit the baseball. They can score runs. They can slug. So you got to think here. I would imagine you're hoping that this Yankees team can get a little bit more consistent offensively as well, no?
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I'm hoping this Oakland A's series kind of kickstarted their offense, scoring the 21 runs the last 2 games. I'm hoping it did. Stanton looked like he was swinging the bat better.
He had a moonshot earlier this week. He crushed the ball there.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that could get him going. Like you said, Donaldson, I don't know how long he's going to be on the team. Listen, he did hit a couple of home runs in Oakland, but again, that's Oakland, so I'm not going to get too crazy about it. But you never know. If he could get hot, that would be great. I just don't know if he's got it in him anymore. Volpe has shown improvement over the last week or so. So that's great. Rizzo looks like he was swinging the bat better, but he got hit by a pitch in his elbow, so he's going to be out a day. But, the offense I'd love to see get going, and I hope this Oakland A's series kind of sparked them a little bit. I think the real spark is out right now, and that's Judge. And until he comes back, you're not going to see this offense really get going.
Yeah, this has really been one of the more inconsistent Yankee lineups I've seen in recent memory. Yes, they've slugged a lot of home runs, but just in terms of just everything else, it's just been a number of things that have lacked. Before I get to Rob Morosco, I want to say hello to Daniel Banner. Of course, Daniel Banner is a young trainee over at our friends over at GT Ministries. I have a big show in a couple of weeks, and obviously WWE is over there in Sheffield. Money in the Bank SmackDown Live just took place, so big shout out to Daniel. I know it's like 3:46 a.m. UK time, so I appreciate that you're up. But Rob Morosco, obviously, Yankees make some history. You spoke about it with your card, but can the Yankees kind of get it together? Because I kind of do feel like it's been an up and down season for the Yankees. I think they've obviously got a little bit of an excuse with the injuries. Obviously, if you listen to the Pinstripe Chronicles and Bobby Tats, Donald Stewart, and Rob Barros, they've certainly made some points. Maybe you could make a case about Cashman and the lack of this, the lack of that, but there has been, I think, some unfortunate injuries, and that has happened a lot this year in baseball, I think especially in the American League. But you got to at least hope here the last couple of days, maybe that kickstarts you and this Yankees team as they get ready for a key second half here where they're going to have a number of games here come. They're going to be important, especially going into the All-Star break. Give me your thoughts on all that.
Yeah, like Chris said, maybe the Oakland series did jumpstart the Yankees offense. I mean, let's get to the perfect game real quick again.
Absolutely.
People, I hear people saying, well, it's the Oakland A's. I don't care who it is. It's hard. It's harder than anything to pitch a perfect game. I don't care if, most of Oakland has AAA players or whatever. It's still an accomplishment. He didn't walk anybody. No one made an error. There was one play that did save the perfect game, but there always is. So I don't care what anybody says. It's an accomplishment, especially he was getting lit up in his past couple of games. I mean, he was really getting lit up, like Chris said. So that is an accomplishment. I don't care who he pitched it against. Oakland, Oakland won a couple of games. People were saying, oh, yeah, look at Oakland. They're on a little streak. They are still, going to give the 1962 Mets a little fight here as the worst team in baseball.
2003 Tigers was the team that was the team that most recently came very close. And the A's are right around that pace, if I'm not mistaken. Just about their 40 and 120 there. They have 20 and 58, the A's, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and So, I don't buy anyone saying it was the Oakland A's. As far as the Yankees offense, I think it's going to come alive. Donaldson, who knows how long he's going to be on that team. It's just a disaster. Aaron Judge, the team lives and dies by Aaron Judge, but the Yankees are going to have enough talent coming back where they're at least in a playoff run. The second half of the season, I am not worried about the New York Yankees at all. At least they have hope. They'll make a couple of moves. They're going to be buyers. They're not going to be sellers like another team that we know of.
We're going to definitely get to them. I want to get to something else in a second that's kind of on a historic pace here. So I definitely will get to that here. But I do want to say hello to somebody that I know is getting ready for a big show. And if I can break what we call in wrestling kayfabe terms here, a birthday recently. That was Mr. Craven Rage, the WC All-Out champion. He's been the champion there for just about, I want to say, 62 weeks or something like that, give or take on the math. I want to wish him a very happy birthday once again. I wished him happy birthday a couple times, but I don't think I got a chance to wish it to him on the day itself because my last 3 or 4 days have been very hectic, especially in one of my jobs, which is New York politics, but that's here nor there because it was a primary day in New York City, and I'm actually involved in one race that is actually going to an automatic recount, a.k.a. Bush versus Gore. So that's here nor there. But I do want to give Craven a big shout out and appreciate the kind words. Happy birthday, champ. So I know we have WCE coverage next Thursday with somebody, one of your fellow champions there, and Mr. Nicholas Crenson. But, I'll save the Mets for a second, but I did want to touch on something. And that right now we actually have somebody that's chasing 400. And you think about 400 and, it's one of those things that, last time it was done, we're going back to Ted Williams and guys have tried a Tony Gwynn. And I guess you could say Todd Helton, Larry Walker had a brief shot at it. George Brett was very close famously in 1980, Rod Carew. But 400 is kind of one of those things, just as we spoke about the perfect game. But 400 in the Miami Marlins, Luis Arias, I mean, he's right there. He's been pretty much around 400 for the past, 30 or 40 days here. Had quite a hitting streak. And the Marlins have been one of the surprise stories here in the National League, whereas kind of the antithesis of the Mets. But I want to go with Chris first, and I'll go with the brute force, and I'll ask him a different take on it. I mean, 400 has been one of those numbers in sports. Miguel Cabrera won the Triple Crown years ago, and we spoke about the perfect games just now, and you talk about different stats. Obviously, Judge in 62 home runs last year, but 400, nobody's cracked that now in over 80 years. I mean, I almost have to put you on the spot. I know it's still early. It's June 30th, and the calendar still got 3 months in baseball, but will we see somebody hit 400, especially Mr. Arias there? And give me your thoughts on that.
I don't know. 400 is such a tough number to get. I mean, he would be the guy to get it this year. Just just by the way, he's not the guy that we're hearing about launch angle and barreling rate and all that stuff. He's just a pure hitter. So there is a chance that he gets it. The problem is he doesn't have a lot of protection around him in that lineup. I know they are hitting better than what we've seen them do, but I think in the long run, I don't know. I'm thinking he's going to fall a little short. I still think it's going to be like a 385, at best. But hey, I'm rooting for him. I really hope he gets it. That would be awesome as a fan. But it would also be great for the sport. Get a lot of eyes on it. Especially down the stretch in September. They'll probably start popping in on all of his games and all that. That would be awesome. Like
I remember Helton in 2000 had a shot at it. He had an outside shot at. That was the last time I think anybody really came, I guess, kind of close. I mean, Tony Gwynn famously with the strike year hit, I think, 394, and that was something where you never know. But nobody's really challenged that.
I'll be honest. I thought we'd see averages go up this year. With the no shifting, but it's been kind of the opposite, right? The averages have been dipping. I mean, don't look at the Yankees.
The Yankees are hitting 231 going into the play.
So we're the great example of that. But obviously, other teams are doing that too. You guys know it kind of as well too with your team. Not exactly.
Well, Lindor is the big example of it. He's on pace for like 30 and 110. And he's hitting like 220, and he's hot.
I don't get it. Everybody made a big deal about these. Getting rid of the shift, and it would start the offense get going. I don't see it yet. We see more stolen bases, but that's because of the all the other rules. Yeah. But I thought for sure we'd see higher averages, and Arraez so far has been great. Like I said, it'd be a great story for baseball if he keeps it up. Hopefully, he keeps it up to at least August or into September. That'd be awesome to see. See a guy that, like you said, we haven't seen it in whatever it is, 80 years, right? Since Ted Williams in 60 whatever.
1941, he hit I think 408 that year, and
I mean that would be great if it's the first time since then. I can't wait. I can't wait to see it if it does happen. So
it's just a fascinating thing, and I'll get to the brute force in a second. And I'll ask you in a different way that nobody's come close to that. You really think about it again. I mentioned a handful of guys. George Brett, 1980, right, was hitting 400 into September. Rod Carew, I think, challenged it for a period. Larry Walker, I think, hit like.
Shows you how hard it really is, right?
Yeah, because you think about it every day, right? So if you average, I guess, between 4 and 5 at bats a game, right, you have to get at least between 1.5 and 2 hits a game. So think about it over a season, right? If you don't get pitched to, or you go 0 for 3, it drops your average down a few points, especially as you go into those months, August, September. August, obviously, it gets more humid out there, and the days are longer, and it's tougher to go out. But then the weather changes. Conversely, go ahead.
Here's another example, right? Ted Williams didn't have to face 4 or 5 different pitches a game, too, right?
Absolutely.
Array's probably seen 3 different pitches a game, at the very least. He's seen 3 different pitches. So that's a big difference, too.
No question about it. No, definitely no question about all that here. And if you're out there on Facebook, and I thank you for coming back on and saying hello. And if you are on YouTube, continue to give us a subscribe on Sportzwire Radio. And the Brute Force shared our YouTube link because for whatever reason, I can't share it on my Instagram story, the Brute Force. So I appreciate that you did actually share it. But, the Brute Force, I did want to ask it to you in a different way because obviously these guys on here have kind of seen some different players, and you and I really haven't seen anybody come close to me. I remember Todd Helton, but I didn't really think he came that close to it. And I don't really remember Tony Gwynn or guys like Rod Carew and George Brett in terms of how close they got. I mean, I saw Gwynn toward the end of his career, but not really at that moment. But you've been an athlete, you've been a coach, and 400 is one of those stats in sports. You look at it. We had earlier this year, Connor McDavid was challenging for some records. Obviously, Brady, we spoke about here in the past. Miguel Cabrera, I mentioned, won the Triple Crown. I mean, can somebody do it? And also from your vantage point as a teammate, I mean, what do you say to somebody like that? That's almost like, do you kind of acknowledge it? Do you talk about it? It's almost like a perfect game where everybody goes away from him in the dugout and they kind of move away. And what's your impression on all that?
Yeah. So first of all, before I even talk about this, I want to give a shout out to the guy who gave me a nice comment, Craven Rage.
Yes.
I saw that comment. He gave me a nice shout out. These wrestlers really like themselves, the brute force. I appreciate
they like you
a lot of support.
They like you. No disrespect to some of the other analysts on Sportswire. You're larger than life. You're big. I get asked by, I've actually been asked by some of the wrestlers, when's the brute force coming back? I've actually asked. The wrestlers have asked me, when is the brute force come back to Sportswire? I'm like, well, he's coming here Friday, and I think a number of wrestlers actually saw when you tagged me and coming back on here. So I think that's why
maybe he's got a future in wrestling. He's got the size.
I've
cut a great promo, right?
They think I got a future. I don't know what it is.
He can cut a great promo. I'll say that.
Well, you know what? He can talk. He's got the size. He's got the physique. I mean, considering some other guys out there that, who are quote-unquote weekend warriors.
The skills, but that
the brute force is in far better shape than
He's
some
got
of the
name.
There you go. Right?
You know what? I mean, listen, he certainly could easily get in there. I mean, we know at least
got it.
I think 300-400 wrestlers at this point I'm friends with on Facebook. In fact, we even have a new guy who's his name's Chris Craven. Craven is, I guess, sort of going back and forth with him. He would love to. He's heard about you, so you might want to consider it. But I'm sure you're going to be a big coach. I'm sure you're going to do some big things in the basketball court.
I appreciate all the support from all of them. So I just wanted to make sure I said that before I go from one great in Craven Rage to another one in Luis Arias. Because listen, I'll be honest with you, and this is not a bad thing, by the way, but it is for us Mets fans. Is that the best thing I've seen in baseball, at a game this year, because I've only been to a few because I can't go to games anymore.
I did see on Instagram. You were going to a couple this year.
Again, I'll get to that in a second. But the best thing I've seen was being in Miami for opening day and watching Luis Arias play, because that's been the best thing I've seen. And listen, when it comes to the next topic that we're going to talk about, I'm going to go off the rails when it comes to my Mr. Confidence nickname, because we all know I'm all about the confidence, all right? But, with this team, forget it with the Mets. But with the Marlins, I got a lot of confidence, and I'm going to say this about Luis Arias. I got a lot of confidence in him to bat 400, and I think he's going to do it. And you know why, Tom Bryce? Another reason why is because the last 2 weeks, the Marlins play the Mets 7 times. And I think that, he'll have to face Dominic Leone and all these other junkyard pitchers we got rolling. And I think he'll go from 385 like the last 2 weeks, and he'll jump to 400 against the Mets. So that's why I got confidence. But to get back to your question, Tom, and I think it's a great one about, as a teammate, what would you do? Well, first of all, if I was his teammate, I'd want to do everything he's doing. Have the same thing he's eating for breakfast. Follow him, rub shoulders with him.
That reminds me of a few years ago with the Brew Crew. Remember when you were struggling and you were going through an extra batting practice? And that was tough during the COVID run. You were trying to find extra batting practice.
Yes. I mean, I would do anything to replicate what this guy's doing. I mean, again, if he's having Fruit Loops for breakfast, so am I. If he's working out at 9 a.m., I'm going there at 9 a.m. too. I'm trying to do everything because this guy has got it going like no other. I mean, he's unbelievable. And I think one of the things you guys said, which is great, and I think it's true, is that he's not like bombing home runs. He's hitting single after single after single. He's an efficient at bat. Us as Mets fans get to watch a guy like Daniel Vogelbach with arguably the worst at-bats I've ever seen in my life. And, when you're a Marlins fan and you get to watch Luis Arias come up first every single game and watch his at-bats, it is beautiful to watch. I mean, this guy, works counts. He fouls balls off. He makes things happen. And he's just enjoying to watch hit. And as his teammate, it's got to be helping them to be watching a guy like this, seeing what he does, what work ethic he has, right? Because remember, Arias is not like a guy who's been on the Marlins. This is his first season on the Marlins. So a lot of these young hitters, who are playing a lot better right now, if you look at the Marlins lineup, guys like, De La Cruz for the Marlins, who we don't talk about because we talk about De La Cruz for the Cincinnati Reds, deservingly so. But the one for the Marlins, he's been doing great. Jazz Chisholm, even though his average, like we mentioned, is not great, he's been hitting well. There's a lot of guys in that lineup. Garrett Cooper. There's a lot of guys. And again, a guy like Arias, the way he works, the way he gets in the cage, the way he does his business. If I was his teammate, I would do anything in my power to try to rub shoulders with him, wear his batting gloves one day, like whatever it takes. But at the same time, as you mentioned, Tom, you don't want to get in the way of greatness. You want to let him be who he is. You don't want to kind of disturb him from what he's doing, because what he's doing is great. And I think as a leader of that team as well, I mean, the Miami Marlins, when they made that trade, people were wondering, Pablo Lopez, pretty good pitcher. Other guys, I mean, this might be one of the best trades that there's been in a while. This guy is an MVP candidate, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, he's hitting 400, of course, and the team's right now in a playoff spot.
They're 15 games over 500. I mean, for the Miami Marlins, by the way, I mean, nobody predicted that. And really, if you look at it, obviously their pitching is good, but Sandy Alcantara has been terrible, and they still are winning.
He was the anchor of the rotation, by the way.
Right. So they're still winning games, but this guy, Arias, is really the catalyst for everything that's going on in Miami. And give credit to a guy like Skip Schumacher, who is doing a great job as the manager. But again, Arias is the kind of the engine to that team and a leader. And the guys on the team are following. And I think that's the reason why they're successful. And as a teammate, like I said, Tom, that's exactly what I would do. And I think that's why this team is having so much success.
Absolutely, no question about that here. Let me first of all say hello to a couple of different people here first, and I have a different email there. But Mr. Anthony Finkel, who, by the way, I guess made it back from one of our friends. Unfortunately, though, I guess I'm going to have to mention it because we're going to certainly have to keep our fingers crossed. But it's the Urban Warrior, Chris Urban, had unfortunately a serious injury out there in the ring. We certainly hope that he is doing well. Our fingers crossed out there. And I also have to ask, where in Brooklyn are you checking out properties? I think you had quite a commute earlier today. He says lighting one up for the fellas. Yeah, Anthony Finkel's always doing that.
Big Fink.
So, yep, he's definitely doing that there. But, Rob Maraska, especially.
Thanks, Fink.
mentioned 400. I mentioned it. You and Chris are kind of seeing these different things. And, why hasn't anybody hit 400 in baseball? And is it going to happen this year with a Luis Arias?
Why? Because it's really hard to hit 400. It's way different than when Ted Williams did it, because they're playing more teams. They're more travel. Remember, there's more flying. There's East Coast, West Coast. There's more pitchers in a game. It's just so many factors. The game is just different than it was. There's more BS now. It used to be, pitcher would throw the ball, fastball, curveball, slider, whatever. Now it's just so technical and it's just so different. So that's why it's really hard. Now, do I think Arias is going to hit 400? No, I think he's going to come close. Although what Brute said about playing the last games against the Mets, he could be batting 250 and bring the average up to 400 at that point. But I don't think he'll do it. It does get hot and humid in Miami.
I think the August, because guys have come close, right? We spoke about Brett. We spoke about Helton. Tony Gwynn's obviously a what-if because of the strike. Larry Walker was in there. John Olerud, I think I saw on the stat sheet, X-Met was hitting 400 in August, and he tailed off pretty considerably. But, not too many people have really come close. Even in recent memory, I'm thinking about the last 10 years. I know Miguel Cabrera, we all remember, won the Triple Crown, but nobody's really come close to 400 that I can think of right in the last 10 or 15 years. You would have thought somebody would have came close.
Yeah, that's correct. It's 400 is like, 300 wins is now. It's just baseball history. It's the past. This stuff isn't going to happen anymore. That's just the way it is. The game changes. It's constantly changing. Rules change. Situation changes. But it is fun watching him and the Marlins, because who expected the Marlins to be at the All-Star break playing the way that they're playing? They're in second place. I mean, the Braves are just blowing everybody away.
Yeah, the Braves are going to be where we thought they would be. They're going to probably run away with this division ultimately.
The Marlins got the number one wild card right now, right, in the National League.
Yeah, listen, I mean, we think about it, right? I mean, we're going to get to the teams in a second, and I'll get to Anthony Finkel. The Padres and the Mets have basically been the two biggest disappointments we're going to look at in recent memory. The Pirates have tailed off miserably. The Phillies, okay, the Brute Force, your beloved Phillies have come back. They've certainly made things interesting. you got the Cubs hanging around, and you got the Reds, who were obviously last week's Cinderella story, kind of like this year's Orioles, if you think about it. And then you got the Dodgers and the Giants, who the Giants just won, and they beat the Mets. They're in the second wild card. So I mean, and you got the Diamondbacks in first place. So it's been a kind of a topsy-turvy National League this year. You think about just these teams we spoke about, and you got the Marlins playing above water, the Giants, who were great a couple years ago. Last year kind of came back to earth, but had a really good last month, and they went the other way. And the Dodgers have kind of underperformed a little bit. Then you've got that National League Central with Milwaukee, Cincinnati, and Pittsburgh, I just mentioned, is coming back to earth. And the Cardinals, I mean, who are the Yankees supposed to play this
another
week?
disappointment team.
The Cardinals are going to have the worst season they've had since I think just after Watergate, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, the Cardinals and the Yankees are almost, different stuff here. And Anthony Finkel says he bowled a 300. Now, Anthony Finkel,
Nice.
first of all, I've known you a long time. Now, I didn't know you were a bowler, number one. I didn't know you were a bowler. I want to know, where did you bowl 300? Now, I'm trying to think if you were in.
Was it in 2 games or just 1?
Ooh,
No, because if you didn't think he was a bowler, a new bowler doesn't bowl at 300.
I mean, that's pretty damn good.
That's what I mean.
That's like Luis Arias' 400. That's pretty damn good.
Well, I mean, my high game's 225. So I've done 220. I've done 300, but I've done 225. But 300, I'm almost curious, where did you bowl that 300? I'm trying to think. If you were in Brooklyn, the only options I think of left is, I think Gil Hodges is still left on Strickland Avenue. I think right in Mill Basin. I have Shell Lanes, if anybody still even goes to Shell Lanes, and I think there's a bowling alley in Williamsburg. Unless I'm missing something here, but I did not know you were a bowler. Oh, he's kidding you. He's obviously he's on a couple things here. Somebody's got Lucy Diamonds in the Sky for you. I got the whole. I got it. Yeah, I got
something.
Yeah. That's okay. Listen, if you work hard, God bless you.
Nothing wrong with that, man.
He's got property in Bed-Stuy. Listen, if
don't be driving around.
He might have done it on Nintendo Switch. Maybe he bowled a 300 on
There you go. I did that a few times.
Yeah, I mean, well, if anybody has Roku, anybody has Amazon Fire, you can actually play bowling games, and maybe you can try that out. But, yeah, Anthony says he's in Bed-Stuy. Yeah, well, if you got property now in Bed-Stuy, you're definitely a rich man. So good stuff there. But, again, obviously speaking about that Marlins and looking at these standings here very quickly, thanks to the crack staff for giving us. Before we get into kind of, I guess, the topic that I think I'm very curious to hear you guys speak about here.
I don't want to hear the standings. So
we've been off
the NL East.
Well, I got to do it because we've been off the air for a couple of weeks. The last time we were on was the beginning of the month. Now it's the end of the month. So obviously we're going to do these spots here regularly. So I got to tell people what's going on here. Braves go into today's play 6 games ahead of the Marlins. The Brute Force Phillies were 43-37 going to today. Mets, we know, are now 36-46. You had the Reds and Brewers tied. Pittsburgh and Chicago 5 games back. The Diamondbacks, again, big surprise there, 48-34. Dodgers and Giants neck and neck. Padres pretty much almost right there at the Mets in big disappointments. The Central is a replay of last year in the American League with the Twins under 500 in first place. Can you imagine that? The Indians are right behind. You've got the Tigers and the White Sox, who are 10-plus games below 500, still very much alive there in that division. Then you've got the West, Texas in first place going to today, Houston 5 back, the Angels 6 back, Seattle, another team that I think a big disappointment here, kind of stuck in limbo here at 38-41. And in the American League, Tampa Bay is pretty much coasted with their strong start, 56-28 going into today. Orioles 48-31. Our Yankees 45-36. Toronto 45-37. Boston 40-42 in last place. So that's kind of where we are in baseball. I'll give the scores here in a few minutes. But the Brute Force Powers, I actually want to start with you because I am very curious on how Brute-like you were going to be on the assessment of the New York Mets, because this is an historic month here for the New York Mets and the other way. But to be fair, to kind of bring up history here for those that have been on the Sports Report for a few years and going back, because we've been on the air for almost 5 years, the Mets have done this. I believe this is the 3rd June in the last 5 or 6 years where the Mets have had a really, really horrific June, which has pretty much set the season back. But this one is kind of one for the ages here, because you're going to remember this with the payroll and just the way they've lost these games. Now, the Brute Force Brad Weiss, if you are thinking about a career in wrestling, if you are thinking about that promo, This is the one that I'm sure all the wrestlers, Omen Black, who's on the road right now to DKW in Ohio, Craven Rage is out there. I'm sure CJ Black right now, who's no fan of me for whatever reason, which is misguided on Mr. Black's point, because I'm going to lay down the law on him a little bit. He's not in the ROEW ring. It'll be Sunday afternoon. But there's a lot of guys, I'm sure, they're going to be tuned in when you hear this. So I'm curious, for those that are listening and watching out there, wherever it might be, give us your brute-like assessment on the 2023 New York Mets.
Assessment. Oh, God. I mean, where do you begin with this garbage? Because I'm not even going to refer to them as the team that they're named. They're supposed to be named the New York Mets. I ain't naming them New York Mets because they don't deserve that right now. They don't deserve to even be called the name. And by the way, you talk about history, Tom Bryce. You know, on this show tries to shut down all the history. All right, but I don't give a damn about the history. You know why I don't give a damn about the history? Because this, as you said, is selective and going to be the one that kills me the most right now, because this is just horrible, disgusting, flagrantly embarrassing. 7-19 in a month of June. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, I thought it was worse. I mean, they are so bad in so many different aspects that I got to take part 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 to try to do an assessment of this team. All right, because they are so bad. Now, where should I start? Let me start, all right, with the front office. Before I even get to the team, let me start with the front office, okay? And let's begin with Billy Epler, okay? Because Billy Epler, ladies and gentlemen, has done a horrific job as New York Mets GM. Horrific, okay? I mean, I can't tell you. The one thing he did right, and the reason why I'm wearing this shirt today is because I
was wondering that, actually. Why are you
the only thing he did right was not sign DeGrom. That was the only thing he did right, okay? What has he done besides that? He has done nothing right, okay? This series right here against the Giants should remind you of some of the things he did wrong. Just as getting rid of J.D. Davis, real smart to get Darren Ruff, who's not even on the roster. He gave away Zapucki, who I know wasn't that great, but at least
love Thomas
in the minor leagues. Yeah. I mean, you gave away those prospects for that garbage in Ruff. Then don't even get me started. I'm going to save him for later. The other piece of garbage that batted 5th in the lineup again today, which I have something to say later. But let me get now to Mr. Steve Cohen and his press conference. Oh, well, it's not over, blah, blah, blah. We still can do it. I believe in these guys. They have a track record. Well, you know what they also have, Steve Cohen? A damn old age. This team is old. This team is corrupt and horrible in many different avenues of the team. This team that was constructed was not constructed well. Okay, and to start talking, and again, I'm not exactly mad at Steve Cohen because he's the one that's given everybody the opportunity to do the right things, and ultimately they have not. Okay, but when it comes to Steve, right, the season's over. All right, I mean, there's no, we have a chance to come back in this thing. No, we don't. Okay, you got to sell. It's time to begin to think about it now. No, we'll wait till August 1st. No. All right, I had enough of that patience. All right, Chris Pizzea, before we came on the show, back in early June and May, was trying to be like, all right, back confidence. Don't worry, they'll come back.
You were Mr. Conference when I was basically talking about the team in the lead. This year, you're like off the rails. It's almost like.
Well, I'll get to that. I'll get to that. I promise I'll be fast. Okay.
You're like Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones is out in theaters now. I mean, that's kind of how you are.
Listen, I tried to believe Chris, and I tried to become. Now I have none. 0. Okay, get rid of all these guys. Get rid of Marte. Trade Scherzer. Okay, everybody needs to go. This team is not ready to win, and they are not going to win. Do not. Sometimes, Tom Bryce, you got to believe what the team is showing you. What you have to watch. Everybody's thinking about, these guys have done this, that, and this. Watch the team play. Watch the team. Okay, and look at some of the teams that they haven't beaten, like the Tigers, who they can't beat. Like, recently, other teams that stink, they can't beat them. Okay, so ultimately, we stink. Now let me get to the specifics of the team. More specific. Okay, let me get to the batting order, okay, and the guys who are hitting for the New York Mets, okay? Jeff McNeil was the batting champion last year, correct?
He was. In fact, I heard that over early this morning in breakfast. There was a couple talking about how Jeff McNeil went from the batting title to a guy who forgot to hit.
Yeah, so he should be on the trading block too. Okay, by the way, so he should be out too. All right, Francisco Lindor. Okay, everybody raves about how he's hitting home runs and RBIs and all that.
8 for his last 18, I guess.
He's batting .220, Tom Bryce, and 8 for his last 18. He's been hitting well recently, which tells you that .220 was formerly almost the Mendoza line for this guy. Pete Alonso is batting .218. I know he got hurt. Okay, but when he's came back, he hasn't been the same. Okay, you got Brandon Nimmo is one of your only constants in the lineup. He's had his up and down. Marte struck out with the bases loaded yesterday and got out the time before that. He hasn't been good. Okay, I mean, you go down the list, and then let me get to this guy right now, who I cannot believe, who is still on this roster, Daniel Vogelbach. Okay, what is he doing on the roster? What is he doing? And not only that, this is why, again, and I'm a coach. I don't like to talk about coaches and what they do and blah, 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 because I know I'm a coach. But Buck Showalter, what in the world are you doing batting this guy 5th in the lineup? What? What has he proven to you to be able to hit 5th in the lineup? He takes 2 strikes before the at-bat even starts. He swings and misses almost every time he gets to 2 strikes.
He can't even run the bases when he actually gets on.
His goal as a designated hitter is to get on base and walk. Meanwhile, he can't run. So what is he doing in the lineup, and what is he doing in a 5 position behind Pete Alonso in a situation to hit RBI guys getting in when he can't even get on? I mean, it is just absolutely disgusting. You go to like Mark Canha of the world, and
I guess
I think we're losing him. Oh, he's back.
All right, I'm back. Okay, you got Mark Canha who stinks. Okay, you got, Marte hasn't been good. You got a bench full of nobody. You don't even have anyone on the bench who's a threat. That's why I talked about J.D. Davis earlier about how
Tommy Pham's been better lately. I mean, that's kind of
excuse me. Tommy Pham's our best player. Okay, and that right there is making a statement about our team. He's our best player in the lineup. Him. That is embarrassing. Okay, I mean, it is just disgraceful. Now, to get to the pitching, because I got to let all the guys talk. Okay, to get to the pitching. Okay, our starting rotation, the old 2-man crew that we're paying $43 million each to, are they really $43 million pitchers the way they're pitching? Hell no. I mean, Senga, is he the Bassett of last year? No. David Peterson, McGill, are they good? No. I mean, you got nothing going right. Carrasco, batting practice for the most part. I mean, you got nobody in the rotation doing well. They can't even pitch 5 innings. And now when they do well and they pitch 5 innings, who's coming in the game, Tom Bryce? I mean, I can't even name you some of these dudes that are coming in the game. Leone and some other dudes I don't even know who I can't even name them. Walker, McFarland, for God's sake. I mean, some of these guys were coming in the game. This was supposed to be a team, Tom Bryce, that we were supposed to believe was going to be good with these type of guys coming into games. I mean, Brigham, Justin Gianelli trying to tell me Brigham was good at the beginning of the year. He is horrible. I mean, Drew Smith, disaster. Let's have a home run every time he comes in. I mean, it is unbelievable how bad their bullpen is, how bad their pitching is, how bad their hitting is, how bad their coaching has been recently. Okay, everything's bad. I mean, even their fans can't get it right in the games right now because they're cheering for a team who sucks. I mean, I had to go to the game on Monday, and I'm wondering why these fans are enthusiastic. I was there not even clapping because I didn't deserve it. I didn't even know why I was there, for God's sake. I was only there because my friend wanted to go to the game, and I wanted to make him feel good by going with him. So ultimately, this team is a disaster. This team is horrific. This team is unwatchable. I will watch the 2 last-place teams in the WNBA play each other over the Mets right now. That is how bad they are. That's how flagrantly awful they are as an organization everywhere. Their scoreboard doesn't even work right. It is unbelievable, and I just can't stand the New York Mets anymore. And as I said, the confidence in this team is zero. I am done. Sell everyone, and it is time for the New York Mets to move into another direction. You got dudes like Danny Mendick. in the lineup. That's what shows you what type of team this is.
All right, my first thought is, did you rewatch the Omen Black promo on Craven Rage? Because that reminds me of when Omen Black came on the Sportswire a couple weeks ago and just bursted out on Craven Rage. Did you watch that promo and rehearse that here like 3 times before this? I know you watched it because you were there on live here watching that on YouTube, as a lot of people were. Did you rehearse that?
I do. Sometimes I sneak in and I do watch it, but
that's what it sounded like to me. It sounded like I was Craven, you were Omen Black tonight. That's what it sounded like.
I will say this though, Tom Bryce. All right, and we all know how much I love Omen and Craven. Okay, Omen knows though, because I know Omen loves me too. All right, that he's definitely seen some of my other rants before. This is not the first time I've had a rant like that.
People do see it on Instagram. I mean, I get like 300-400 stories. So
what I'm saying is, I know Omen. Listen, I'm not questioning him. Like I watch him sometimes. I love how he is. But at the same time, this is not my first time doing this rant and these loud voices. So
no, but this is like, I mean, I know we've been off the air for the regular lineup here.
That's who you get 2 weeks off. I mean, I had to hold it all in.
Yeah, but you think about it. I'll get to the other guys here in a second. This team though, in 2 weeks, I mean, they were heading south. I know we spoke a little bit on Instagram off the air in the last couple weeks or so, but I mean, they really went south in 2 weeks. I mean, they just showed it here on the screen on SNY. They started the month, right? They were only 4 games out of first. So despite they were going that way, it was still in a wild card, 4 games out of first place. But now they lost 14 and a half games in a month. They lost 10 games in a wild card. So if you think about it, I mean, you dropped. Yeah.
Tom, I'm going to say something else, and I'd like Rob Maraska to say something on this, because I cannot believe this, and I really can't, okay? Because you went over the standings, Tom Bryce, and you told me like some of the good teams in the league. Were a lot of those teams from the NL Central?
No, absolutely not. No,
because the New York Mets have a record of 4-18 against the NL Central this year.
Milwaukee, we're 1-6 against Milwaukee. Yeah. We're 1-5 against Milwaukee. Pittsburgh, we lost 2 out of 3. Cincinnati, we lost 2 out of 3 there, right? St. Louis, we lost 2 out of 3 there. Chicago, we lost 2 out of 3 there. I mean, so
twice.
Yep.
So if you add it away, come out to 4-18.
I mean, Rob, how do we explain? Because everybody this year was like, "Oh, the NL Central. Oh, maybe the Cardinals will be good, and everybody else, whatever." The Cardinals have been horrible. The rest of the division has been pedestrian at best, and the New York Mets, the New York Mets can't beat them. I mean, I was just at the game on Monday, and they had this dude Ray pitching. I never know who the hell he was, and he was throwing a perfect game through 5 innings. I mean, Ray, that's what we can't do. I mean, this team has hit such rock bottom. You can't even beat the NL Central. You can't beat the Tigers. I mean, when you're doing these type of things, Tom, you can't beat bad teams. You don't deserve to stay as a team. You deserve to be dismantled.
Yeah, the Central is great against the Mets. So if they inserted the Mets there, forget about it. I was only going to say ditto and point up to the brute force, because that's how I feel. But this Mets team are like Harrison Ford in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Old and boring.
Well, I'm actually I want to see it. I think tomorrow I'm going to see it.
I got to see that.
I'm so curious.
It can't be as bad as the Mets, right? That's the way I look at it.
Nothing can be
I'm going
bad.
to see it probably instead of the Mets. I mean, that's kind of my plan. I actually am very curious on this. I got that. I got
Chris.
I got the flash to see.
Can I just tell you this, by the way? I believe the Oakland Athletics had a better record in June than the Mets. I don't think anything gets worse than the Mets.
No,
and you know what? I still feel, I not that I feel positive, but I'm gonna let me Rob, you should finish.
I'm sorry. Okay, I like when you guys when everybody talks, together. I like that. But I just want to say, yes, the New York Mets. Can I say the word sucks?
Yeah, you can say it here.
They do. They do.
Okay on the radio.
It makes me sick. Marte, what? First of all, how many double plays is this guy hitting into when they have bases loaded? Manning's, bases loaded. He hits into a double play, and then he does it again. Okay, then tonight They got a runner on base. He's on first. 9th inning, he gets thrown out trying to steal. What is this guy doing? And other than that, he doesn't look like he's even into it. The Mets look like a defeated team who are not into it. Nimmo, I'll keep him out of that because, like Brute said, he's the only consistent guy on the team. But they're old. And that press conference, I'm never going to get that 50 minutes back in my life, man. It was boring. He didn't say anything that you wanted to hear. Oh, well, like in business, I'm a patient man. I'm patient, and I understand. I'm a fan. I understand the fans want me to do something, but there's still time. I believe in this team. What does he believe in?
Then do something.
I mean, do something. What's he believe in? I believe too. I believe that Vogie he's a waste. Get him off of the team. I can't take it now. I'm going crazy like the brute force because he is friggin'. He's up there. He takes.
It's contagious.
It's a strike. He swings at crap, but he just stands there waiting for a walk. And then he hits a home run after having a week off to get his mind. I have to get my mind together. You're in the major leagues, dude. What are you talking about?
By the way,
a home run. All right, he's back. The crowd's roaring. Then he hits another one. All right, he's back. And then that's it. He's not back. He's out of there. Get rid of him. I mean, come on already. And the bullpen.
Rob, wait, quickly. Before you get to the bullpen, I just want to say this. I wanted to add on that point because I was at the game on Monday. And by the way, there are some of those Mets fans. I have no idea why they still like this guy, Vogelback. But I just wanted to say that in the 9th inning on Monday when they were down and there was 2 outs. There was 2 outs in the game. Pete Alonso had gotten out, and Vogelback came up. Almost everyone in the stadium began to walk out because they knew the game was over. So I just wanted to make that clear that that's how a lot of fans feel, that when Vogelback comes up, the inning's basically over. So that's what I wanted to say.
Like Brute said, when Tommy Pham is the best player on your team right now, the hottest player, Tommy Pham, let's pay $150 a person to go to a game, park and eat, to watch him get up and the Mets lose. It's bull. I got to just watch my mouth. It's out of control and it's ridiculous. Like I was saying, the bullpen. What bullpen? Give me a break already. Why aren't you doing anything? Sell off.
Let me ask you guys both this question, and I'll bring Kristen in a second. Let me ask you both this question because obviously it's been thrown out there that they had this payroll, they spend all this money. They have all these guys. I mean, they do have some names, and yet here we are in probably in recent history, even though the record's not as bad as Met teams of yesteryear and certainly the 60s and the 70s, but this is probably the worst New York Mets team in recent memory that I've seen. I don't know if anybody else could say differently. So, I mean, why did it turn out this way? I mean, why is it that this team is now being labeled as the worst team? Money can buy the sequel, and this is a team that people should now boycott, and all these different things you throw out there. So why has it gone that way?
Yeah, I guess I'll start that off. Mainly because I'll be honest with you, and I do have to, by the way, and I should make this apology not only to the Braves but to Tom Bryce, because he's been telling me all along to just the Braves are the team. The Braves are the team. Don't handle. All right.
There's organizations though that they know how to win, right? The Braves know how to win. The Yankees are able to find ways. Go ahead.
That's why I wanted to apologize to the Braves, because I picked the Mets last year, and as you guys know, I picked the Phillies to win the division this year as a joke to try to get the Mets going. Of course, that obviously did not work.
The Phillies got turned up a little because the Phillies could still salvage the season.
Well, they can maybe make the playoffs, but either way, my point is that we believed in the Mets. A lot of guys took the Mets to win this division, kind of forgetting about all these different factors like did we not see that the Mets bullpen was pretty weak? I mean, besides the fact that they had Robertson and, you thought, Rayleigh, who's not bad. And, maybe you believed in Drew. I mean, there really wasn't anything else there when Edwin Diaz went down. And I don't know why we believed in this bullpen, but we did. This lineup, I mean, we did believe in this lineup, but there were a lot of guys who played, kind of a little over the top of what typically they would do. McNeil, yeah, he could hit. But, he hit at a really high level last year. Marte, who, is normally consistent, right, hit at a really high level.
Best overall hitter last year. You could have made the case as Marte went, the team went.
And then, the other thing for me is that, the starting pitching, Max Scherzer really showed you where he was at the end of the season last year. He showed you against the Braves that he wasn't that type of pitcher that can get you outs or big outs against the best teams at the end of the season. And then obviously the Padres game, which I had to watch for goddamn sake at the game, where he let up 4 home runs. I mean, he showed you what he really was at this age. And it's not like he's a bad pitcher, Tom, but when you're expecting him as a Met fan to be a $43 million pitcher, right, just like Verlander, and you get this, right, that's why it's been such a disappointment. Because, we have guys who we think they're this now because of what they did, and they're really just this. And, the thing with previous Mets teams is that we've kind of known that this team wasn't – they were a good team, but, we didn't really expect too high or too low. We expected too high, and that's why –
Well, they won 101 games last year, so people looked at it like, okay, you won 101 games. You added Verlander.
But I think, again, people looked at – last year and said, okay, well, this year's team is going to be the same because we have similar players or whatever. Okay, but at the same time, I mean, look at the bullpen. We don't have similar players in the bullpen. They're not. And Ottavino, who's supposed to be a guy who was good, is horrible. I mean, he's terrible. The lineup, I mean, we talked about it all year about addressing the DH, addressing some of the power hitting in the lineup. We did not do that. So in the end, we're paying for it, and some of the other guys in the lineup were just not getting it done. So I think as Mets fans, we believed because of last year that we were going to do the same thing because we had similar players. But at the same time, I mean, you were expecting some unrealistic things. And I think as Mets fans, that's why I'm apologizing to the Braves, because I think I've disrespected them because of what they've proven and what we have not. And I think that we have a lot of problems that we just didn't realize.
Well, I think it's a culture. I'm going to get to Chris in a second. I think it's a culture that the Mets kind of unfortunately have been, saddled with. You think about other teams. I mentioned the Yankees. The Yankees, just I know they spend, but they've also done different ways, I think, to be able to do things the right way. Certainly the Braves over the past 30 years. The Dodgers have been, for the most part, pretty good. They've been able to find ways. They've only got that one World Series title, but they've still been able to at least go out there and be able to be successful. And you think about other teams around baseball that have been able. Listen, the Guardians is an example. Terry Francona, right? That team does it with very little payroll each year, and they find ways to win. They find ways to be competitive. Milwaukee in this country. Milwaukee's pedestrian this year, but they're another team. Have solid stability. They have a manager there for a long time. They have a team in place. They have an identity. Whereas the Mets, kind of struggle with all those things. The Astros, the past 8 or 9 years, obviously been a model franchise. So unfortunately, the Mets have never been able to get these things right. So, Chris, I mean, you're watching this from afar, and I obviously played the show with the Talking Rivals with you and Patrick, and I'll play it throughout the weekend. I've got a bunch of Pinstripe Chronicle shows I'm going to play because I'm live a couple of times here throughout the weekend as I'm easing back into the regular schedule here of live shows on Sportzwire now that some of the things I'm done for a while. But, I mean, I'm going to ask you then from afar, what do you think about this team? I'm going to transition into maybe the question that's probably I would have to think, aside from what the brute force said about trading players, is going to probably dog this team. I would have to imagine between now and the rest of the season is what is the fate of Mets manager Buck Showalter? So what do you say to all those different things?
Well, he's definitely going to survive this year. At least that's what it sounded like from the owner. Like you said, that was a horrible press conference that Rob said. It was like a horrible 15 minutes. To me, this goes back to last year's trade deadline, right? You guys needed a bat, and what'd you get? You traded Darren Roth and Vogelbach. Come on, that was a waste, and we know how that worked out. So then this offseason comes up, and what does Epler do? Epler is the main guy in all this. He's the guy that put this mess together, right? So what does he do this offseason? Nothing, right? They tried to get Correa. I get it, but we know how that went. So they didn't answer the big bat thing. Okay, yeah, but we got Alvarez, you got Beatty. That's great. That's awesome to get these young kids in the lineup. That's awesome. But you can't count on them to carry your team or to be that impact offensive player because they're going to go through their, I see it with Volpe, right? He had a horrible month of June, but he's starting to get better. But, hey, it is what it is. We're not counting on this guy to be our
with the Yankees, though, we're thinking, okay, they've got guys that are coming back. They haven't been
right. It's
healthy.
a different.
These guys have been healthy. They just have done nothing except Alonso.
I think, and you know what? What I don't understand is Epler's seen the problem here from the beginning, especially with the bullpen. Like, do something, make a trade. Kansas City is out of it. He should have been on the phone saying, okay, give me your closer, Scott Barlow. Give me Chapman. It's too late to get Chapman now because Texas picked him up. Get Chapman and Barlow over here. And you know what? Here's another guy they could have traded for. Trade for Salvatore Perez. Okay? Yep. They would have gave him to you guys because he's got, I think, 2 years left. And think about it. Perez is going to help you in two ways. Number one, he gives you a like that impact bat as a DH, right? That's a pretty good bat to have as your DH. Obviously, an improvement over Vogelbach. I don't even have to say that. You would be an improvement over him. So that would be one for him. And number two, he's going to be your backup catcher. And he's also going to be a mentor to Alvarez, who you're going to have as your catcher for the next decade or so. So to me, that's a done deal. My problem is why hasn't Epler made any moves to shake this team up? Because the talent is there. Like you said, they won 101 games. Even if they don't match that, they still should be in the 90-plus win range, this team.
Yeah, because we talked about the teams in the National League. Yeah, because we talked about the teams in the National League this year. Other than the Braves and I guess the Marlins of late, nobody's really that impressive. Okay, Giants have had a good month. I mean, Dodgers have come back to earth this year.
Arizona's been hot this year.
Arizona's been good. They were a team I brought up early in the year. What'd you guys think? They've kind of been able to play pretty well. Cincinnati's had a great run. I mean, they've been an amazing story. I don't know if they keep it up. The Phillies have kind of been what they did last year. Maybe Harper's back in the lineup. They've got the Thunder. Maybe they get back into the playoffs. But, nobody's been really super duper impressive in the National League other than the Braves. Whereas in the American League, you got some star power. You got a number of teams. But in the National League, you don't really have it. That's why this Mets season, I think in a lot of ways, is really disappointing because, again, I talked about the teams. I talked about the competition. Nobody's really impressive this year outside of Atlanta and maybe of late the Marlins, but still, nobody's really that impressive this year. This was really a season for the Mets that they should have been,
and I think right, they made some moves like in the last couple of weeks to shake things up, to add some pieces to the bullpen, maybe get a bat, something. Maybe that would get these guys saying, oh, you know what, we got to wake up. I'm sure they're saying that, but maybe if you add a couple of guys, DFA somebody, maybe wake this team up. You got to shake things up. You can't just keep running the same crappy bullpen out there and hoping, oh, maybe they'll hold this lead this time after the last 2 months of not doing it. Of course, losing Diaz, that was the worst part, right? I get it. You lost the best closer in baseball. That sucks. All right, you bring up Robinson. I mean, you sign Robinson to be the closer. All right, but you still got to solidify the rest of the bullpen. If Robinson was going to be your setup guy, now he's your closer. Now who's your setup guy? Ottavino? That's not working out too good.
Who was really your middle guy last year?
Right, and that's been the crazy part about this, especially this month as well, is that if you look back, especially going all the way back to when the Mets actually played the Braves in Atlanta, they were winning all 3 games by 3 or more runs, and they lost all of them. And that's mainly because of the guys that we have out there in the bullpen. You just saw the game in Philadelphia where Buck Showalter decided not to use Robertson or Ottavino, and he uses Leone and Brigham and all these. I mean, every time those guys come in, it's almost like you're expecting the runs to come back. Like tonight, Robertson was the one who let it up. That's like the first time he's done that. But for the most part, it's been all these other guys that, again, have shown you they're not reliable. They've shown you, and what kills me about the press conference, too, is that, they're talking about all these guys with the back of their baseball cards, and they've done this, they've done that. Sure, there's other spots in the team that have that, but the bullpen, Do you see anybody who has that? I mean, anybody who has a proven track record of something? Dominic Leone, does he have some sort of track record I don't know about? I mean, TJ McFarland, does he have something?
Outside Robertson, I would say you're right. I mean, Robertson has had success, maybe not recently as a closer.
But again, a bullpen is not one guy. I'm sorry.
That. Right. Well, let me ask you then a follow-up for all three, because obviously we spoke about the press conference. I got all that. So what would you have wanted Steve Cohen to say? Would you wanted him to be George Steinbrenner-esque? Would you have wanted him? What would you have wanted?
Listen, show some life. Like Rob said, it was like, oh, we're not out of it yet. Or show some life. Show that you're pissed off. Don't show that, all right. Like he was like nonchalant about it. I get it that you're trying to be calm in a storm right now, but you gotta be a little assertive. Show that you're upset. I'm not saying I get not firing Showalter, and you don't want to fire people. I get all that. But you got to do something. Make some moves. Like I said, DFA somebody, trade. You got to make moves. You got to do something. And to do absolutely nothing this past month, not adding to the bullpen, not trying to get a bat, not trying to do anything, I find that I don't know. That's mind-boggling to me, because now you're all right. You're at 10 games out. Yeah. That's going to be a really tough hill to.
You're 10 games out of a wild card. You're not even out of the division,
right? It's under 500 wild card, right. But you're playing San Fran, who's the last wild card. So if you swept them, you're out 7 games of the wild card.
And now the best you're hoping for is 8. Now you're hoping you don't go back. And I want to say hello to somebody here who's up at, I think, almost 5 o'clock in the morning. He thinks I don't know who he is, but I just realized he has a YouTube channel also. He is also, I guess, still a wrestler. His name is Bob Costin, who's obviously famously from the LWF, the Lancashire Wrestling Federation. Again, hello to all of our UK wrestlers out there, because obviously Money in the Bank is the first major WWE pay-per-view in the UK. The last time we had a show, but in terms of in England, it's the first one in a very long time. And he asked me, are aliens are real? Well, that reminds me of what was Sammy Hagar saying famously for a while, that aliens were real, and he saw them. He woke up, and kind of maybe Mets fans are thinking the same thing here. And he said it was a joke, man. Keep the subject. And he's caps lock. Some people have said it's that time of night for some people, between the Anthony Finkels and the Bob.
To his point, though, I'm really looking forward to football. That's going to be exciting.
I think he's talking about soccer, though.
No, he's talking football. Remember, the NFL goes to London, by the way.
Yes.
They're in Europe a few times. I will say, today officially in about 15 minutes will be July 1st, right? So that means training camp starts in about 2 weeks?
Yeah.
So, all right, so we're not that far away. I mean, listen, I'll tell you, my plans will be hopefully watching some movies more, some summer blockbusters. I think the Mets are going to be going the other way. They're going to be a big box office.
Tom.
Yep.
One thing I think that Steve Cohen, and of course he couldn't say it because he's still under contract with the Milwaukee Brewers. I think he's just waiting for David Stern's contract to run out this year with the Brewers. And I think that's who he's going to make an offer to become president of baseball operations for the New York Mets. He couldn't say it, but that's the one thing he was hinting at in that boring press conference.
But I don't get it, though. Why can't the Mets, even before Steve Cohen, ever get it right in their leadership? I know the Yankee fans, but they've had a chain of command. The Braves have had stability. The Cardinals have had stability. The Dodgers have had stability. See a theme? The Guardians have had stability, right? The teams that have been competitive for the past decade or longer, they've had stability. But I'm trying to be objective here and help me understand this. Why can't the Mets ever get it right? We heard Brody Van Wagenen and, Sandy Alderson came back here and there. And obviously now this guy Epler, and that hasn't worked. So why hasn't it for the Mets? They're never getting it right.
Well, the Wilpons, but you got to, at some point, you got to stop saying the Wilpons, because they were right when they were talking about it.
This is what, year 3?
Year 3.
He said 5 years, right? This team's going to compete for a World Series. And I'm looking at this team. I don't see them competing for a World Series. I mean, Verlander and Scherzer are basically baseball's version of Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair back in 2000, 2001, 2002. I mean, they're not going to be here much longer. Carrasco, I mean, obviously people certainly don't want anything to do with him much longer. And you look at this lineup, and it's all full of holes. And you have the bullpen we spoke about. I mean, I don't see this team competing for any world championships at all.
And do you think now after this disaster of a season, do you think Ohtani's going to want to sign with the New York Mets?
No.
Which is something else I want to talk about real quick. Marcus Stroman is really, what is wrong with that guy? Last night on the SNY broadcast, Gary Cohen was joking around with Keith Hernandez about giving up his number for Ohtani, and Keith said he wouldn't do it. So what does Stroman write on Twitter today? He calls Hernandez a dinosaur. Does this guy the Mets are in this guy's head? Why?
Well, I don't. Well, Brad probably would be able to answer that slightly more because he played and maybe he's in a locker room. The only thing I could surmise, just thinking about it, my own thing, and obviously dealing with wrestlers and other people, and is that maybe Hernandez rubbed Stroman the wrong way. Maybe there was something Hernandez said on telecast and Stroman didn't like it. I mean, Stroman seems to be one of those guys. I mean, Brad, you can plead the fifth on that. You played with a guy like a Stroman a little bit. Was like a Frank Basile was like that a little bit in ways. Doug Niblocky. I love his brother Chris, but you can plead the fifth on that. But there's certain guys.
You can definitely rattle him, is what you're saying.
Yeah, there's different guys that are different. There's different cats. Marcus Stroman's one of those guys that seems to be like maybe there was something there. You think Hernandez said it rubbed him the wrong way, Brad? You want to say anything at least on the Hernandez Stroman part?
No. Listen, I coach kids, and I have parents that have their ways of doing things and say things and are very much outspoken and stuff. And sometimes it goes off the right way, and sometimes they're off the rails a little bit. And sometimes that's Marcus Stroman. He just finds something to talk about, and he has to say something. And in this case, it wasn't really it was something to really talk about or comment on. Listen, first of all, we all know how that goes, really. If the player whose numbers are tired is willing to let the other player wear it, he'll allow him to wear it. But if he doesn't, or if the player, like an Aaron Rodgers, for example, has a lot of respect for Joe Namath, so he just decided not to do it. So what's really the topic of conversation with Marcus Stroman to butt his head in and have to say something?
I just think that's something to do. I just think that's something to do with maybe when Stroman was with the Mets, Hernandez said some things. But
still, he's not with the Mets now. He's with the Cubs. He's having a good season. What the hell does he have to worry about that for?
He don't like the Mets. He obviously don't like them.
Yeah, but you know what? It's so ridiculous. He's not gonna. They just retired his number last season. It's so stupid, really. And Ohtani's worn number 16 in the World Baseball Classic. He's wore on the number. It's so stupid. It's just, you're right. He just does not like the Mets for some reason. When he was first traded to the Mets, he didn't want to get traded from Toronto to the Mets. He wanted to go to the Yankees. So he's never liked the Mets. And it's just a stupid thing to say. Keith's a dinosaur. He was an MVP. He won 2 World Series. He's a dinosaur. What's Marcus Stroman done? Nothing.
All right. I mean, I'll move on here.
Tom, can I say one last thing?
Absolutely. You say anything you want.
To conclude the Mets, and hopefully we don't have to talk about them, because, by the way, I really am not watching many games these days. I mean, I can't
I told you off the air. The last month I've watched very little of this team. Almost.
No, I mean, I'm just trying to advise people to please be smart and please not be dumb. Especially when you go to the games, right? And these fans that are just going like crazy. I'm not saying not go have fun at a baseball game, but can you be a little realistic that the team is sucking and somewhat show some upsettingness and anger towards it? Because some people are just just to go to the game, just yippee, woohoo, and the team is 10 games under. So what I wanted to advise, though, is not only that, but I would advise everybody, to get away from New York's worst team in the New York Mets. and start watching New York's best team in the New York Liberty. I would tell you right now, please watch the New York Liberty, the best team in New York, because they're worth watching, and the New York Mets are not. If you want to watch Daniel Vogelbach at bats, then you could keep watching the Mets, because I don't even know, again, why he's batting fifth in the lineup. For that to me is a big thing with Buck Showalter. I'm not going to trash him, but at the same time, you can't have that guy batting fifth. There's no way.
Well, hey, that's like with the Yankees. They keep on batting Josh Donaldson and hoping that he's going to wake up. And, yeah, he hit a couple of home runs, but guess what? That was the Oakland A's. So I'm waiting for them, after this weekend, they got the Cardinals. And then after the Cardinals, they come back home, and they got Baltimore. That's a big series. If you're going to forget about catching Tampa, you got to catch Baltimore first. So if you want to catch Tampa, you got to catch these guys first. So, and Baltimore's, you guys seen it, man. Baltimore's good. And they're only going to get better. They're a young team, and they just keep bringing up these top prospects that they've been collecting the last couple of seasons, 2-3 seasons. And now they're starting to hit and pitch, and they're all hitting. So, that team is only going to get better. Baltimore is that young team that's, to me, I compared them with the Astros. When the Astros first started getting good in 16 or 17, that was a team that you knew that was just going to get better and better every season. And that I see Baltimore doing that.
Yeah. So. And by the way, Rob, next weekend, and I know Tom alluded to it, but next weekend, it's the Padres and Mets. So speaking about stink against stink. Ladies and gentlemen, don't bother watching that. If you want to watch something, if you like bad baseball, you can watch the Padres and the Mets next weekend. But if you want to watch something better, like Chris said, watch the Orioles, watch the Rays, watch the Cyclones. Yeah,
there you go, the Cyclones.
Not the Mets and the Padres, please. Don't do it. Go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
Tom speed.
Okay, well, then I guess we'll have to find out. No, and I guess we'll have to find out. But I guess that when it comes to the Mets, I would have to ask one more point in the Mets, because I do want to move on here and get to some final miscellaneous thoughts here. I mean, at one point, then, does the fans decide to not show up? Because obviously this team's pretty much in dogma, pretty much. So at one point does that happen?
Well, remember, it's not like the old days where there were a lot of walk-up ticket people buying tickets.
Right.
People already bought their tickets. They spent the money on the tickets. The little kids want to go, so they got to take the kids to the game, So you paid the money, you're going to go for the money.
Well, look, I would say this. If the Mets do, and somebody out there wants a Scherzer and a Verlander, I mean, there isn't going to be much to watch this team from a casual standpoint. At least you could say, what, I got Scherzer, I got Verlander. They are basically full of star power Hall of Famers, but I definitely think that they're not going to have this team here on here much longer. But, got to jump in.
What do you guys think are they going to do leading up to the trade deadline? Are they just going to sell, or do you think they're going to try to be able to get a piece or two to try to change things around?
That's the question. They just keep losing, though, so you can't even answer that.
36 and 46. I mean, you're not really in playoff contention.
It's over. But I have to make one quick comment about what you were saying, Tom. Listen, I went to Shea Stadium in 1979, 1978, 1980, 1981, 82, when the Mets were so bad. I mean, Lee Mazzilli, that's who you got to cheer for. John Stern, that's it. And I sat through those games. So people are still going to go to games.
Okay, well, look, I mean, from a casual standpoint, you do have some people out there that want to watch because you got Verlander, you got Scherzer, you got Lindor, you got Alonso, but there is a point here. But before I do get to closing thoughts here, I do want to bring in the Brute Force Brad Weiss, because Anthony Finkel mentioned it, which I don't think I want to get too brute-like, but New York Liberty certainly got crushed last. I know it's been a while, and last we saw each other was at a New York Liberty game. I think we did one show after that, but I mean, anything you want to say on a team that we hope they'll have some meaningful games here in July and August? That is a New York Liberty who play also here in the city of New York via the Barclays Center. Anything Liberty?
Let me correct you there, because let me go back to being Mr. Confidence. You said we hope we're going to play meaningful games. Oh, no. We don't hope. We know we're playing in meaningful games. The New York Liberty will be playing in meaningful games. They are still the third best team in the WNBA. And again, they played the Aces last night. The Aces right now are 14-1. They are obviously the best team in the WNBA, obviously the reigning champions, and they're firing on every cylinder right now. If you watch that game, I mean, the Aces were not making mistakes. Obviously, the Liberty were. They were turning the ball over a lot. They were giving up easy baskets. Early in the game, they couldn't stop Kelsey Plum from going left, and she's a lefty. So, the Liberty, listen, they are the team that's still trying to come together as a group. They still have new pieces, coming together.
It hasn't played a lot of basketball together.
Right. But in the end, they're 10-4, Tom Bryce. I mean, they're still a really good team. Their few losses have been tough ones. They've lost a couple. But again, it's part of the maturation process for the Liberty. So I actually think that even though I was very angry, you should have saw me. I was very upset when they were getting their butts kicked last night. I was very upset.
I saw on Facebook there was a little thread going on there. You and Anthony Finkel, I saw a little bit, right?
Yeah. So I was upset. But at the same time, this, I think, actually is going to be good for the Liberty because they need to watch film on a game like this where they kind of got their butts kicked. They made a lot of mistakes, but they still right now, as I said, and I'm going to say it confidently, are right now New York's best team. They are the best team in New York. They are the most talented team in New York. And certainly, I think, still have the best chance of winning a championship currently in New York. And the one team they have to be able to get over is the Aces. And right now, they're a little step behind. But they have 3 more games against them later in the season. Me and Finkel both said already that we're going to make sure we get to one of those 2 games against the Aces because I think as we go later in the season, Tom, you're going to see this team gelling more. You're going to see them playing right. They were playing well. They just ran into a team playing better. So it's not like they're playing bad. So I'm still very confident Liberty. I'll tell you, for the Mets, you'll have to pay me to go. For the Liberty, I will pay to go. All right.
Well, on the bright side, well, it may not be as cheap as Oakland A's games coming up if this team continues to struggle. Certainly, there will be some tickets that you could certainly afford. And Anthony Finkel says here, to be the champ, you have to beat the champ. I think that's kind of, you're sort of quoting the Ric Flair, to be the man, you got to beat the man. I say hello here to Anna. I'm going to get the name wrong, as I always do. Anastasia Risnia.
She's mad at us.
Padres and Mets are listening. They're probably the 2 biggest disappointments in baseball right now this year. I would have to say. Well, the Cardinals maybe would be a little bit more of a disappointment than both, just because of the Cardinals are never in this kind of a predicament here. But like everybody said here, football season is on the horizon. I think that excites everybody here because at least from the.
But can I say this quickly, Tom?
Yes.
That, of course, our buddy who's not on tonight, but John Gonzalez. Already.
John Gonzalez isn't coming on because we're not on Facebook. And unfortunately, a lot of people say, hey, you on Facebook? And I'm like, no, I have a temporary block.
Right. But what I wanted to say about John Gonzalez is that already it's June and getting into July. And already he's trying to scare me about how his picks are going to be so great this year. I mean, he's already trying to intimidate me with how he won the picks last year and he's going to do this year. I mean, he's messaging me on the side already, trying to get in my head.
Well, that goes back to wrestling, ring psychology. A lot of wrestlers have ring psychology to kind of take you away from what you want to do in the ring. He's looking at your size. He's looking at your tone, all that different stuff. So that's
trying to rattle you.
That's what
Listen, it's motivation. I will say that. I'm very excited for this football season. I really am.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good football season. Anthony Finkel with the free Tom Bryce hashtag. Well, I don't think that's going to do anything, but I appreciate that. I wanted to ask Chris one more question before I get to closing thoughts here. Actually, it's a different take in that the New York Islanders actually made some news here. I guess that for a lot of the fan base, I think kind of wanted to happen for a while, and that Josh Bailey is actually no longer going to be a New York Islander, and he's actually going to be with the Chicago Blackhawks. And Bailey, is my time here on Sportswire, actually was, believe it or not here, the longest tenured New York player of all the major sports, which I think a lot of people wouldn't have believed that. But Bailey spent 15 years with the Islanders, and I guess kind of in a way the modern day Patrick Flatley. I think Islander fans might have maybe beloved Flatley a little bit more, similar type of player, maligned, maybe unfairly so because he was drafted very high, never quite lived up to that draft position, but is had a pretty steady career. And he's going to be one of those guys. I remember having this discussion at the very beginning of the old Sportswire days that he was going to end up in the team's Hall of Fame, and I think that's going to happen. And I don't know how people feel about that, but he's no longer going to be an Islander. And I was kind of curious how you felt about that, because he was actually the longest tenured New York athlete of the whole 4 major sports, and its career in New York finally comes to an end, I guess.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that, but I think it was a move that had to happen. If they're
too late, yeah,
exactly, that too. But if they're trying to make a move this year to get, not just to a playoff, but to actually be a Stanley Cup contender, they got to get better players in here. You got to improve the power play. We've been talking about that for a couple of years.
Oh my God!
So and you know what, they had to get rid of a 2nd round pick to get rid of him. Trade a 2nd round pick on top of that for someone to take his contract. So, but now that they have this money freed up, they got like $10-11 million in cap space. Now let's see if Lou could, bring in a couple of players now that's going to make
one that the Islanders have always targeted for years, Vladimir Tarasenko, maybe even to that level. That's a name
I would love that.
That's a name that is going back for a while. And I just thought it was fascinating about Bailey that, he was the longest tenured athlete. You wouldn't have thought about it, right? Josh Bailey. I would have said to anybody here on this
People
panel,
are saying he should have his number retired. I'm like, are you nuts? I'm like, Hall of Fame I get because of the games played and all that. Yeah.
And I've actually had this conversation with people, with Islander fans, because I was a season ticket holder for just about 4 years. If you think about the Islanders' history post the Cup runs, I mean, who have they had that you could point to and say they should be either a Hall of Famer or have their numbers up there? I mean, I mentioned Flatley, who really wasn't a Hall of Famer. I mean, who have they had for a long period of time? I mean, Tavares was here for a while, but I think the way it ended, you're not going to put him in the team. No. You're not going to retire his number, right?
No.
I mean, who else would they really have? Pierre Turgeon didn't play here long enough.
Right.
I mean, who did they have post the Cup
LaFontaine,
year?
Another one, not long enough.
Yeah, 7 years. I mean, so who is they had that you'd say, all right, Mark Streit wasn't here long enough. I mean, Mark Streit's beloved by the fan base. I mean, who have they had, not to go into, a tangent here on the Islanders, but I mean, they haven't had anybody that you could say since the Cup run or anybody that was part of that run that you could say, all right, maybe I should retire their number and, have that kind of success. I mean, Tavares would have been the guy, but I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, Franz Nielsen.
I definitely see your point in that sense, because the Islanders got nobody since that run that they could retire their number. And I think to a point, there's
Ziggy Palffy, I would have said, but only was here for 4 years. I mean, Ziggy Palffy was great when he was here.
Right.
4 years, I think.
And Janssen too was great.
Yeah, he was great. I mean, but they didn't have anybody really for that long a period of time.
No. I guess if you're going to retire someone's number, it would be his. But in this sense, thank God, the Islanders have that 4 straight cups and they have all those great players.
Oh, absolutely. The run they had.
They don't have to retire a number. They could just be like, hey, we'll give him a night. We'll put him in the Hall of Fame and give him a little plaque on the wall, but we don't have to retire his number. You know what I mean? That we could do.
I mean, look, thankfully they have that run. But that's the problem. I think they had the 5 straight Cup finals, the amazing playoff streak, and all that stuff. But since then, or anybody that was involved in that, or the tail, even LaFontaine, I think LaFontaine was the 5th year of the Stanley Cup. He got called up. Patrick Flatley was called up. I believe the last of the Cup runs that they got to the finals. Since then they haven't had anybody.
No,
I guess that was good. Maybe the Sutters, but then again, I think they were toward the end of the Cup run also. So that I'm even going back. I mean, I'm just thinking. I mean,
no, I know you're right. I think in that sense you're right. Because you got to honor, this era of the team too. It can't be just about the 80. About that run.
I think. Well, I mean, I guess maybe Lee.
I think he will. Yeah, if he stays on the team.
I think Lee. Maybe Nelson. Maybe if my choice is Lee, Nelson, Bailey, I would say maybe Lee or Nelson over Bailey. But Bailey's got the 15 years. He's got all the numbers that he racked up. Really, nothing great about it. But
Anders Lee got how many more years on his contract?
Oh, is it 4? I think, right? 3,
yeah, 4 so he might, and he's a captain. And Bailey was never the captain.
No,
right?
he was an A. He was always an A. He was never a captain. Yeah,
so,
no, never. Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting discussion what the Islanders will do with that when his career is over. But again, congratulations to Josh Bailey as an Islanders run. We'll see what he does in Chicago. I would imagine not much longer left there. But again, Islander history. Thinking about it, I mean, Ziggy Palffy was great for a few years, but wasn't here long enough. I mean, listen, you can go a couple other ways, but I don't even want to go there. But, DiPietro, 4 years, we're never going to go there with that. I mean, never going to bring that up. Like Mark Streit I mentioned, but Streit wasn't here long enough. And we can, Franz Nielsen, same thing, Kyle Oposo. But again, they didn't really have long enough runs. I mentioned
longevity.
Sutter. I mentioned Turgeon. Derek King was another player. Derek King had some pretty good years, but not long enough. You'd say, all right, we're going to retire his number, such so you can go down the list here. And I'm even thinking about when they traded for Michael Pekka, same thing, Mike Pekka, and they weren't here long enough. So interesting stuff here. And Anthony Finkel has a funny one here before we move on. Josh Bailey was longer than Katie and Harden's day. Well, I'm sure Brad will talk about some of that here. It's NBA free agent signings. I'll let him go to closing thoughts here last. But good stuff here in sports. But actually went a little longer than expected. We're having a good time here. I appreciate that people tuned in. I say hello to Anastasia out there in California. Anthony Finkel is out there on the road. Bob Costin, who always shows up when like the least expected on a show. Some other people as well. But let's get to closing thoughts. Rob Maraska, I turn it over to you. Anything else you want to plug, share, say? And then one more reinforcement on the contest. I'll certainly plug it again next week on the show. And the floor is yours, and fire away.
Excellent show, guys. Glad to be back. Glad to have you guys back. The last two shows were just me and Tom. The poor audience
didn't have much of an audience.
Yeah, but we actually did have a good talk for both shows. It was like the old days of
Sports Report. Yeah, the old sport. That was days you were at a podcast. You were like a pre-recorded podcast.
Yep.
Brad was on some of those. We remember, Brad, we did the old podcasting. Now everything is
SoundCloud.
Yes, I even go back to doing it on, and Rob remembers, on Skype. I tell people all the time. I run into people that just are starting out, and they ask me, what's the advice that I would give? I said, well, you have all the tools you have today. When I started, it was Skype.
Yep.
So
we started at Skype. I remember that.
Yeah, I was on Skype.
But anyway, so it's great to be back with you guys again, and I'm going to put up the contests tomorrow.
Okay.
For the Domingo Herman Tops Now Perfect Game card. I'm going to get a lot of traffic on that, and I'm going to put up the Nimmo one more time also, but I'm going to do that tomorrow morning. It's just too late.
Yeah,
no one's going to see it anyway, so I'll do it tomorrow morning. I'll tag you guys. The New York Mets, there's nothing else to say about them. Right now, for Met fans, the baseball season's over. It's done. But listen, you got to give props to the Atlanta Braves. They're an excellent organization, as much as it pains me to say that. And they're a great baseball team. That's the way it is. But anyway, great to be back with everyone, and looking forward to next week.
Absolutely. Definitely the New York Mets. I will say one thing. You might get a book or two on this team, though, when it comes to a sequel to the worst team money can buy. But we'll find out. R. Maraska on Twitter, Rob Maraska on Facebook. And Chris, I turn it over to you. I'm looking forward to keeping the Talking Rivals in the dial. Last week's show, maybe I didn't get it, but this week's show, I'm looking forward to having it here a bunch of different times, and want to give you the floor. And also, congratulations. So your daughter graduated last week, so congratulations.
Yes, congratulations.
Appreciate it.
On that, and I turn it over to you. Anything else you want to plug, share, say, and the floor is yours.
Guys, great show. Great to be back. Love chatting with you guys. Talking Rivals, we delayed it a little bit this week, but we got it to you on Wednesday.
Yes, I got it Wednesday night. Yep.
I
played it. I played it before we went on the air yesterday. Unfortunately, I fell asleep like twice, so I just didn't play it.
That's good.
No, it wasn't good because I'm on like the last 4 days, and Anthony will know about this on the inside. I have had a total of like 12 hours sleep, so it doesn't sound as good as it sounds. So it's okay.
So yeah, we'll be back next week, normal, probably Monday. For Talking Rivals. This week, the liftoff show we had to skip because Charmin's son is getting married this weekend. Yeah,
Okay.
I think tomorrow actually.
Yeah, I think this week seems to be like the week where it was last week and this week I've noticed that people are getting married almost. So it's kind of that.
It's a good time of the year to do it, right? It's
I
nice
think
and
so.
warm out. They could do outdoor parties and stuff. So yeah, I think that's why people do it now.
Cool.
But yeah, we'll be back next week. We'll get a show back up for you guys. So definitely look for Liftoff, Talking Rivals next week. Back to normal. I'm looking forward to, man, this weekend, Yankees Cardinals, always a great series. And then next week, I was saying it earlier, Yankees Orioles at the stadium. So
that's gonna be a big one. Gonna be a big one.
Definitely looking forward to that too. So definitely check us out at Liftoff, at Talking Rivals, and talkingrivals.com.
Looking forward to all that. Yankees Orioles, when it happens, when those two teams mean something, is always a fun series. And please follow Chris at CP7NY on Instagram, Twitter, Liftoff Jets, Talking Rivals on Twitter as well. And while we didn't save the best for last, we saved the biggest for last. Brad, I'm curious on the closing thoughts you have for us tonight because we haven't had these in a while. So I'm kind of curious on what have you been up to the past couple of weeks. I had heard from one of our friends, a guy named James D. Simone, might have heard of him. Says he wants to return to Sportswire before he leaves us here in the state of New York. So hopefully make that happen. Maybe talk to some other people that we haven't had a chance to talk to over this month now that my schedule is a little bit more easier, hopefully over these next few weeks and into the summer. So I'm sure a lot to say with you, and I turn it over to you. I say no more. The Brew Force, Brad Weiss. The floor is yours.
Yeah, Tom, thank you for another great week of the show. Thank you, Chris and Rob. It was definitely great to be back. I will say, since the Mets have been so bad, that it's been nice to have a little break here in June. If there was any time to take a little break from talking sports, it was during this time watching the Mets. So I am somewhat thankful for that, but I am also very excited to be back. So thank you guys.
Absolutely.
Of course, you could find me on Facebook, Bradley Weiss, where I know we're struggling with Facebook for the Sportswire, but hopefully we'll be back soon. You can find me on Twitter at BradWeiss20 and on Facebook searching at BWeiss20 and at Coach Brad Weiss. And if you have been tuning into Coach Brad Weiss on Instagram, you do know that I recently concluded the spring Level Up LI season, which you can follow us at levelup_LI. And in this spring season, which I cannot believe I did it, but in the spring season, which basically started in April, all the way to now June, I coached 92 games between 5 teams.
My math is that's almost on average a game a day almost.
It's just about a game a day, and obviously that's putting in tournaments where you have 3 games in one day on some weekends. But 92 games with 5 teams in about a couple months. And, I was very fortunate enough for my kids to have won 60 and 32 in those 5 teams. All 5 teams won more than 10 games. All of them made championship game appearances. I made 13 total championship appearances in either tournaments or leagues, which to me was an absolutely incredible accomplishment. Considering the teams that, we were developing. We had a lot of new pieces similar to some of the teams we spoke about today, a lot of new pieces, a lot of change. But the teams did really well. They took my leadership very well, and it was a really successful season. So, if you're out there and you're a basketball person with a kid that wants to be a part of a great program, Level Up is definitely for you.
We had a great honor to cover that with Mr. Winter himself.
Jesse Winter, and for sure, we hope to have other Level Up coaches and influencers here on the show. And there is going to be some news later in the year about Level Up, and I'll get to that after the summer, but certainly that's something to look forward to. So I wanted to make sure I shared that here on the show. Before I get to one other thing, I want to definitely say that there was one person that reminded me of this as we got back to the depressing topic for a second with the Mets. Unfortunately, one person reminded me that Mets stands for must end the season. And I think that's exactly what we should say with the Mets. And, if there's anything worse than the Mets, I guess it would be the air quality here in New York over the, today and some other days that we had with the Canadian Fires. So that's not the only thing that's been worse than the Mets. But must end the season. I wanted to make sure I said that. I think it's just about time for us to do that. But as we mentioned before, football season is on its way. I'm already working on getting our picks pool, as well as hopefully some other things, as well as fantasy football, which I'll be doing again this year. So I'm excited for all that to go forward. So I'm looking forward to that here in the future. Now, speaking of things that recently were discovered, all right, because I wanted to bring that in as well. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a great podcast that has just been started. They have 3 episodes in. All right, and it's called Swing the Salt.
Yep.
And Swing the Salt is run by Gordon Sawyer, who's been one of our best guests here on the show, and Ryan McNeely, who's also a St. Joseph's current player on Long Island.
His family are big supporters of ours.
Yes, so those two are running a fantastic podcast. I've gotten to watch the first 3 episodes. I've been very much entertained, and I was so entertained that I actually wanted to bring up a few takes, all right, to kind of go at them, all right, about some of the things that they did, because
go ahead.
They did a fast food draft, all right, on their second episode, and they had a few things that I had to critique. And I just knew I had to bring it into my closing thoughts on one of our shows. So the first one, all right, with Gordon and Ryan. I want to get to Ryan first. All right, Ryan had McDonald's and Burger King over Wendy's on his picks, and I was just like, that is a major issue. I mean, his issue with Burger King was, or his thing with Burger King was their commercials. He was saying their commercials are the reason why they're that. And I really like their commercials, trust me. But the food, I mean, he even went as far to go after Gordon and say that Burger King's fries are better than Five Guys. And I was like, oh, man, McNeely, you're losing me. But then we had Gordon Sawyer, of all people, very smart, very intelligent.
We had him on when he talked fast food with him. Go ahead.
We know he loves his Chick-fil-A, but he put IHOP on his list. IHOP? I mean, IHOP ain't no fast food. Since when? I mean, I know he likes the pancakes, and I totally see where he's coming from, but I don't know about fast food. I mean, that's a little crazy.
It's a chain brand.
Yeah, but it ain't fast food. I mean, that was my kind of take with that. They were having an argument between Chipotle and Moe's, and I definitely went with McNeely on Chipotle. And then there was one other thing that he mentioned with Five Guys, and I got his point about how, the fries, they load the bag with them and all that. But I guess in Suffolk they don't have Shake Shack. I was kind of interested to know that Shake Shack is better than Five Guys. That's me.
You know what?
Me too.
I gotta be honest. I
agree. I love Shake Shack.
I agree too.
I'm gonna disagree on that actually, because I'm gonna definitely disagree with it, because I think Shake Shack is completely overrated. I think Five Guys. They have in the Staten Island Mall, and they have it at Barclays. They're right across from Barclays, and they have it in the mall. I'm not saying Shake Shack's like, to the level of let's say McDonald's, but I kind of think Five Guys I would probably prefer. I actually will give you an alternative, which I think is better than both. Checkers.
Yes, and that was one. There was a few that I thought were missing from their list because.
So if you want to give me on a better take, I would take Checkers over Five Guys and Shake Shack. Shake Shack for me, my problem with Shake Shack is you pay $20 for the burger, fries, and the drink. The fries are good, I give you that, but the burger is like it's average. It's Five Guys.
I love the burgers and I love the Chicken Shack. It's also another one that's very good. So I'm a big fan, but again, Checkers was one of those I thought they missed on the list. They didn't have Checkers on the list. Another one.
We have a Checkers in Staten Island. I think Checkers is better than both.
They didn't have that on their fast food list. Again, Gordon had IHOP, which is ridiculous. I mean, come on. I mean,
I remember as a kid, IHOP was in. I don't know if Chris was there at the time, but IHOP used to be on Ralph Avenue. It was a big deal to go to IHOP. It was like IHOP was kind of fast food.
I like IHOP. I mean, I like the pancakes, but it's not a fast food place. I mean, that was my beef with that.
It's like, do you think Checkers is fast food almost?
Yes,
it is. It definitely is.
I think IHOP is sort of like on the board. It's a chain.
IHOP is like, IHOP is like Friendly's, like a diner type.
That's what I'm saying. So That's why I wanted to make sure I addressed it, because I know Gordon and Ryan are going to hear this. So I want to make sure.
Gordon is kind of our St. Joe's analyst. I know the team has kind of had some new players coming in. They announced, I think, one of them right earlier. I'm sure when Gordon comes back to Sportswire during the season, because we're not too far away from season from our Golden Eagles. I'm sure we'll ask.
I have a good one. I have a good one for burgers for you guys to try.
All right, tell me.
Brute Force. You might have. You definitely heard of it. Burgerology.
Yes, fantastic.
Those are
very good. Very good.
There's one in Staten Island, but there's a few in Long Island.
Oh, I got one. I don't know if you have them in Long Island. They have them in Brooklyn. You guys ever go to BurgerFi?
I've heard of that too. They actually had a location, but they closed it down here in Nassau. But I've heard of that one too. Another good one.
BurgerFi, I would say BurgerFi is a good one. So you want to put
BurgerFi.
Yeah, it's on 7th Avenue and 86th Street, right across from Diker. Well, the dog run in Diker Park, not the actual Diker Park, which is further down. Yeah. So BurgerFi is very good. In fact, I have to say BurgerFi is a good one. So yeah.
So either way, again, their podcast is fantastic. They talk about basketball and they talk about sports, but then they go on and they
I enjoyed the movie talk more than anything else.
Yeah, that's another one. They talked about movies. They talked about, different other things. So they kind of bring in sports, but also some sort of interesting topic about fast food or movies or whatever's on their mind. So
they're interesting guys. And Gordon we know very well because Gordon has been with us a couple of times. So we know Gordon very well.
So be sure to follow their podcast, Swing the Salt.
Yes.
They're on all social media platforms.
Instagram. Definitely check them out on YouTube. The guys have a lot of traction, and they're definitely, they're perfect for it. So they're a good yin and yang almost. And kind of Gordon's kind of little older than Ryan, but they kind of mesh really well with each other. I think they have chemistry. There's no question about it.
For sure. So I'm going to be listening, and I hope that you guys do too. And they talk about NBA free agency just like I do. So I'll quickly wrap that up by saying that there were a lot of signings today. A lot of people stayed with their teams, like Kyrie Irving is staying with Dallas. But I think one of the big moves that I wanted to mention, I'll just mention a few quickly, was Bruce Brown going to Indiana. I thought that was very interesting, going from Denver, the champions, to Indiana. Kind of a team that's in the limbo right now. That was definitely an interesting move. And then also, the team that lost the championship, right? The guy goes from Miami over to LA. I'm blanking on his name, the point guard. I'll remember it, but either way, the point guard, the little guy from Miami.
Not Kyle Lowry.
No.
Not Tyler Herro.
It's got to come to me. No, it's going to come to me. But either way, that was a big deal because it was 3 years, $33 million. Gabe Vincent. I keep forgetting.
Gabe Vincent.
My God. Vincent. Sorry. 3 years, $33 million to go to LA. That's a big move. I think that Gabe Vincent is a much improved player, undrafted, goes to LA, and he's a good shooter and a good point guard. And they weren't going to get anybody that great because they didn't have a lot of money to do it. So I think that was a big move for the Lakers. Look for that. And obviously the big news with James Harden, he gets the option, but now wants to leave again. So just a whole bunch of stuff in the NBA.
Signs with the Knicks for one more to get option to the player option for $12.5 million. Dennis Schroeder, I think, Lakers 2 years, $26 million. Kyrie re-signs with the Mavericks.
There was a lot that went on today. Chris Middleton stays with Milwaukee. We go down the list. Fred VanVleet goes to Houston. So, there was a lot that went on, but we'll talk more about that next week. But I wanted to make sure I got a few in before I concluded. So, thank you guys for another great week. Hopefully, we're back here next week.
We'll be back next week. No, we will be back. We'll be back on regular schedule.
I hope everybody enjoys their July 4th as well, as that's coming up. So, enjoy that. And hopefully, we'll see you next week.
Absolutely. July 4th. Be safe out there. Obviously, if you are out there on the roads, be safe. Be certainly be merry. I hope to be somewhere in a movie theater, maybe of some sort. Who knows, right? But certainly good stuff there. BWeiss20 on Instagram, Coach Brad Weiss. Also, congratulations on all the success. I've been seeing it on Facebook and certainly on Instagram, and also Level Up LI, Level Up _LI. Make sure you follow that. And also the guys, Gordon and Ryan. Obviously, I was speaking with Ryan here and there off the air about the show, and I really, really enjoy the stuff that they are doing. And we want to continue to support them because Gordon is basically our analyst during the season. We're going to do some Golden Eagles games, and the season's not that far away. October 15th, when the guys can get back together, is 3.5 months. That's it. So
Right.
time flies, and very excited about that, even though we're in shorts right now and T-shirts. But we'll be back out there covering the Golden Eagles. But I want to thank everybody here for tuning in. Also want to wish a happy belated birthday to your sister. Your sister's birthday was last weekend, the Brew Force. Want to make sure you
That's right.
happy birthday for that. So I want to make sure that is wished as well. And all great stuff there. But what a show it was on Sportswire Radio. I want to thank Chris Bizet of the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals. I want to thank Rob Maraska, and latest contest winners next week will be announced. The Brute Force Brad Weiss, who was very brute-like tonight in his takes and his hot opinions when it came to the likes of the New York Mets, and even a little bit there in the closing thoughts and the fast food options, and kind of unperspective there, the Liberty we spoke about, and 400, a lot of great topics there. You can catch all of it here on YouTube at Sportswire Radio. Also, we're on sportnarium.com/player 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And I'll be back here Sunday afternoon around 3 o'clock Eastern time in a face-off between Jason Storm, the wild card, the ROEW champion of the world, and the good guy CJ Black, who's taking an interesting approach. He's taking an approach where he's combative toward Sportswire Radio. Well, you're coming on to Sportswire, so I don't know if that's in your best interest to want to take a combative approach towards Sportswire Radio, because he hopefully realizes he's not an ROEW ring where he can take advantage of referees and other people. He's going to be here with the sheriff of Sportswire Radio, and I am a commissioner of deeds, I would remind you. So I actually am a commissioner in one of my jobs, and I will certainly use that on you, Mr. Black. So certainly watch what you're saying. Watch how you are on Sportswire, because I will make sure I call it right down the line. So we'll get all of that on Sunday. But thank you, everybody here, for tuning in. Enjoy the movies. Happy 4th. Be safe with the fireworks. Be safe with the wildfires. Well, I think the wildfires will probably give you the firework-like smell. So you don't even have to do fireworks this year. You can just go smell them outside. No. That might actually help you out there. But thank you, everybody here, for tuning in on Sportswire Radio. If you're on sportnarium.com/player, you'll probably go back to your regularly scheduled program at some point. I'll be back here Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern time on the number one global radio station that is Sportswire Radio.